Hello BookTube. Today for Tag Thursday, I will be doing the Great Gatsby 100th Year Tag. This tag was created by Sherry of Books and Radio Plays. I'm drawing the questions from Greg of Another Bibliophile Reads, and earlier today I watched Allan of Big Hard Books and Classics' version of this tag. So I'll leave links to all three in the show notes down below. So before I begin the tag, I have a confession to make. I have never read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Normally, I probably really should have read it in high school. But what my school did was if you took advanced placement English, you normally would have at least one novel to read during the school year. And I wasn't in advanced placement English until I think either my junior year of high school or senior year of high school. I know I was in it for my senior year of high school, I think. I could be completely wrong and I just had regular old English. But I want to say The Great Gatsby was probably read either in freshman or junior year. But I could be wrong. So I never read it in high school. And I never read it in college either. None of the classes I took featured The Great Gatsby, although one of the classes probably could have, but again, I never got around to it. So this is one of the blind spots of my reading life. I may or may not correct that in the near future. Who can tell? We shall see. Anyway, on to the prompts. Question number 1. Do you like parties? Name a book with a big or small party in it. I don't particularly like parties. Whether it's just a general party, or it's a party for somebody, or if it's for me. I don't particularly care for parties all that much. They're too tedious for me. For a book with a big or small party in it, I'm going to go with Fairy Tale by Hiro Mashima. Fairy Tale is a long-running manga series about the Wizarding Guild Fairy Tale. The story features on a small group of fairy tale wizards, Natsu Dragneel, Lucy Heartfilia, Ursa Scarlet, Greyfall Buster, Happy, and later Wendy and Carla, alongside other fairy tale members who temporarily join this core team. There are a number of parties throughout Fairy Tale, the most memorable of which, well, there are two memorable parties in Fairy Tale. One after the Grand Magic Games arc, in which Fairy Tale won the Grand Magic Games and was able to save the guild and buy back the guild building. And at the end of the Grand Magic Games, there was a massive party thrown by the King of Fury to celebrate not only Fairy Tale's victory in the games, but also the defense of the kingdom from an attack of time-displaced dragons. The other party that takes place in Fairy Tale is during the final epilogue chapter, in which Lucy Heartfilia, the main female character, wrote a novel about her experiences as a fairy tale wizard. It probably should have been kind of, in the translation at least, a memoir or an autobiography rather than a novel, but unless it's like autofiction. But anyway, but she won an award, and so the final epilogue chapter takes place during the reception for the award. And Fairy Tale Wizards being Fairy Tale Wizards, it's quite a party. Question number 2. what would you do to get the love of your life back? I don't know. That's a question that I've never really thought of. Probably not much, because I'm not a soap opera villain. Name a book where a lost love is the center of the story. Not a romance, because that's too easy. For this, I'm going to go with The Seven Deadly Sins by Nakaba Suzuki. The Seven Deadly Sins is a manga series. Didn't run as long as Fairy Tail did, by about 20 chapters. 20 volumes. And it's inspired by the Arthurian mythos. And at the center of The Seven Deadly Sins is two love stories. The main one being between the two main characters. Meliodas, who is the leader of the Seven Deadly Sins and is an immortal demon, and his enduring love for the various incarnations of his goddess lover, Elizabeth. So, thousands of years before the series begins, there was a great holy war between everybody, humans, fairies, giants, and goddesses, against the demons. And during this war, the demon Meliodas fell in love with the goddess Elizabeth and defected from the demons. At the end of the war, the demon king and the supreme deity, Meliodas' father and Elizabeth's mother, cursed the two. Meliodas was cursed with resurrective, effective immortality. And Elizabeth was cursed with resurrective immortality. So while Meliodas would endure for thousands of years, Elizabeth resurrects. And the curse is that she will inevitably, her and Meliodas will meet, she'll fall in love with him, and then she'll remember her past. 3 days after that, after she fully regains her goddess powers, she dies. And the cycle repeats over and over again. So for significant stretches of time, while they do reunite periodically, there's that absence as well. And Meliodas' main goal in all of this is to break the curse that the Demon King and the Supreme Deity placed on them. The other story of lost love is from one of the other members of the Seven Deadly Sins band, who is in love with a fairy princess who died shortly after they first met. And much of his arc is trying to bring her back to life, which he ultimately does at the cost of his own immortality. So, I'll go with the Seven Deadly Sins for question number 2. Number 3. Nick was a character in the story and the narrator. He really put you into the picture. Who is your favorite narrator? For this, I'm going to go with the novel, The Swimming Pool Library by Allan Hollinghurst, and its narrator and main protagonist, Will Beckwith. The Swimming Pool Library is a novel about Will Beckwith trying to figure out what to do with his life. He is, as a young mid-20-something, already very well off. In Great Britain at this time, his grandfather, who is an incredibly wealthy man and is a minor noble. Whether that's inheritable or not, I'm not quite sure. But I'm assuming it would probably be more of a life peerage than an actual, like an inheritable peerage. But in order to avoid death duties, what he does is he settled his estate on his grandson. So if his grandson outlives him by a number of years, then they don't have to worry about death, or if he lives beyond a certain number of years. I don't quite remember how it is, but basically it's a way to get around the inheritance tax. And so Will's already very wealthy, and he doesn't really have anything to do. So a lot of this story is him trying to find something to do, and this occurs with him falling in with a young, he's not young, he's an elderly gay aristocrat, Lord Nantwich, who Will meets while cottaging, and Nantwich has a heart attack, and Will saves his life, and they sort of meet up a few times, and they could become something of friends, and Nantwich tries to entice Will to writing his biography. And so a lot of this narrative is sort of Will reading Nantwich's diaries, and there's a purpose behind what Nantwich is doing. Not only educating Will on British gay history of the 20th century, but also his grandfather's more antagonistic role in that history. Now, I have very torn opinions about the Swimming Pool Library. About every other attempt I have to reread it, I end up bailing on it. Oh, I have a very complicated reading relationship with Allan Hollinghurst. Let's see here. Moving on to prompt number 4. What is some advice given to you in your younger and more vulnerable years that you've been turning over in your mind ever since? Nobody's ever given me any advice whatsoever. Not that I can remember. Which either shows that my memory's not as good as I wish it was, or that nobody's ever given me any advice that's memorable. Anyway, moving on to prompt number 5. Tom Buchanan is not a good man, but it is done in a very subtle manner. Name a book that the character is not obviously bad, but as you get to know him, he is very, very bad. For this, I'm going to go back to manga and Bleach by Tite Kubo. The main antagonist of the first 48 volumes of Bleach is a renegade Shinigami named Sosuke Aizen. Initially, when Aizen is first introduced during the Soul Society arc. So Bleach is about a young man named Ichigo Kurosaki, who can see and interact with spirits. One day he meets a young woman named Rukia Kochiki, who is a Shinigami, a Soul Reaper, whose duty it is to help transition the newly deceased to the Soul Society, where they will live until they are reincarnated, and to also purify hollows, corrupted spirits that have lingered in the world of the living too long and have become feral. One day when they meet, Rukia is tracking a hollow who attacks the Kurosaki clinic where Ichigo lives. And Rukia is injured, and to purify the hollow, Rukia transfers her soul reaping abilities to Ichigo. However, when she tries to reclaim those abilities after Ichigo has purified the hollow, she can't reclaim her powers, rendering her temporarily powerless, and forcing Ichigo to become her substitute as the Shinigami assigned to Karakura Town, where Ichigo lives. All of this is part of some numerous amounts of machinations going on between a separate renegade Shinigami named Urahara, who created a spiritual object that Aizen wants. And so there's a lot of back and forth. Eventually, Rukia is taken back to Soul Society to face punishment for dereliction of duty and passing on her powers to a mortal. And all of this is sort of being manipulated by Aizen, who initially presents himself as a very conscientious captain of the sort of Shinigami squadrons. And it's at the end of this arc that he reveals himself to actually have been manipulating everything from the beginning. And that the culprit that he'd been sort of pushing the blame to was actually, in fact, one of his subordinates, Jin. And then earlier, later in the series, there's a flashback volume where Aizen does basically the same thing. To rise in the ranks to captain, he betrays his initial captain, and he frames all of it on Urahara. So, Suzuki Aizen for this one. And that wraps up the Great Gatsby 100th year tag. If you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged. Anyway, BookTube, that's all I have for today. So until I see you next time, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.